Good morning, Brad. And good morning, everybody, for making time today. We have something really special. I've been really good, Brad, and very, very busy as the world of independent watchmaking is really booming at the moment. We are trying to keep track with it and try to make sense of it in the best way possible.
Great. And any new brands to your portfolio, or brands you've decided to not move on? And I hope you're still supporting Graham as well.
Oh yes. Oh yes. I think it is fair to say that any watch brand that strives for doing things differently and out of the norm and thinking out of the box then comes into our radar. And a brand like Graham was always, one of the bravest watchmakers, and I've worked with them in the past as well, and I've learned an awful lot about thinking out of the box. So today we have a brand that I have learned about fairly recently. It is I can recap what the brand stands for by saying that today I don't think there's possibly another brand in the independent watchmaking world that offers the same amount of value for the prices these guys are at. I know it's a bold statement, and I hope we will be able and capable to justify and to show that today in details, as not only we will go live from the premises of Horage watches, but we will also present a special edition that we obviously created in collaboration with you, with SCC, and with Horage.
And you spied on us that we went to a trip, and there's a couple of people on this call that went to Bremont with us, and then you came up with a really, really fascinating fact that maybe something we were told was a slight bending of the truth about particular movements, but maybe you can enlighten us on and the members that were on that Bremont trip.
Yeah, as things happen, nothing comes from nothing in the world of watchmaking, and developing an in-house manufactured caliber can take as long as 10 years, as it is happened to Horage, for example. But yeah, Horage, famously, they were involved in the development of the Bremont newly announced in-house manufactured caliber, and I'm sure the guys from Horage that I will introduce to you now will be happy also to answer eventually questions on that one. So it's an interesting point you're raising, Brad, because it makes it really, really relevant with the news in the UK over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've just exited the spotlight now. Really, really interesting to hear about the little bit to do with Bremont, but obviously we want to talk mainly about Horage and the history and everything. So I've already left the screen, so if could unmute themselves, please, because you are muted. I'll sit in the background and let the late joinees join in. But no, thank you ever so much for both your time and really looking forward to learning all about Horage.
I'm unmuted, so you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, so I hope it doesn't sound like a fish tank, but we are here in a glassy area.
I would like to introduce, of course, Andy, Andreas Feltz, founder of Horage, and Landon Sterling with him, sitting next to him from BN, and Landon is a partner as well in Horage, and is our counterpart in developing Horage in the UK, as we are trying to do at the moment. As Horage is a fairly new thing, Andy, but you've been going on for a few years now, because as I said, nothing starts from out of the blue in the world of watchmaking.
Correct. So we probably I can show a little bit some slides also to talk about where we come from and what we do. So currently, probably background of the name. What is the name background? Hora is Latin, the hour, and age is English, and together it sounds French, Horage. And okay, in the UK, some people pronounce it in a different way, but that's okay.
A bit like porridge, but it's Horage. Yeah.
Horage is the way to pronounce it, and it shows that it is kind of a mix of different cultures and languages. That's a little bit the background story on the name. We are currently sitting exactly in that place here. So I'm behind that window. That's in Biel. Needless to say, it's the center of the watch industry for a very long time already. Rolex is around down the corner, down the road, a kilometer to the left from me, and Omega to the right. So industrial scale, high performance watchmaking comes from here. And that's where our roots are. And we come from a supplier's background. So we supplied a lot of brands in Switzerland and Germany with components originally. And, you know, after a while, when you do a lot of OEM supply business, and you probably think about why not doing an own brand. We know how to make watches. At this time, we didn't really do movements. So this was in 2006, 2007. And and some people who know a little bit about the watch industry, they know that basically most of the watch industry is actually fed by ETA movements. That was the history. After the quartz crisis, Biel recovered by actually centralizing the 2 or 3 calibers which we know today in an industrial scale production, and then ship that to the other brands. And that was the Swatch Group emergence. And in 2003, and very early, there was a time when they said, we don't want to do that anymore, and we want to keep the movements for ourselves. And so we, as an original supplier, thought, okay, if our customers don't have movements, then probably they don't need us anymore. And so we started to get into that business with a 2-directional view, let's say. One thing is, okay, we would like to make a brand because we would like to make watches for ourselves. So we obviously will need movements because we also don't get some. And on the other hand, perhaps some of the partners which we were serving our clients also need such a movement. Yeah, and that's how it started. In 2008, we launched ourselves in the beginning, not with an own movement. We didn't have that in the beginning. So we used some ETA off the shelf, and then we very quickly found out, okay, probably just forget that. And we were freezing the brand in 2010 again. So that's why many people don't know us. And during this period, we actually developed K1 as a movement. And this took, as you can see, 2008 to 2015, so roughly 7 years. That's a long period of time, but I think that this is already quite ambitious when you look at the big companies. They put 10 years behind it. And that's a very simple fact. You need to start doing something, then you design from scratch. We did that. Then you test it, then it doesn't work, then you need to redesign, you test it again. And each of these cycles, when you do that 3 times, takes roughly 2 years at least. So it's fair to say you roughly need, for an industrial scale, high performance product, 6 to 7 years. We're not talking about manufacture. Yeah.
Okay. And in the process, it became apparent, Andy, that there was a lot of work and a lot of room in terms of the value that could be offered at a particular price point, because you became expert in obviously educating yourself on the way to understand every single process of the manufacturing, which brought you to where you are today.
Yes, that's correct. So, I mean, when you do something like this, you have to take a very long view, and you need to make some very basic decisions. So some people think when they have a machine, then they can make a movement. Of course, that's not the case. So the value in movement making comes from people's minds. So the intellectual capability of being able to design a highly complex multi-parts piece. Same, I mean, you guys are in the world of cars. I mean, how many people really engineer an engine? There are not many. In fact, there are very few who can do that. And this takes a long time, and the uncertainty in engineering takes a long time. So we focused from the beginning, and you will see that when I give you a walkthrough, we focused on engineering first. Hire the guy, sit down and say, do that, nothing else. Just do engineering. Just think about what needs to be a good design, what is a good construction, what does a future brand 10 years down the road need as a product line. And that's how we came up with modularity in our movements, so that we do not end up with a scattered landscape of so many different movements. So that was the basic work. And the second decision was, okay, don't buy machines, because when you don't have volume in the beginning, you don't need machines. Only if there's no supplier, then go for a machine. So that means we have taken a long time to search for the best suppliers in our area. And Biel, and probably 30 kilometers around us, are the best suppliers in the world for micro mechanical components. So we're talking to all of them, find out who is the best, who is willing to work with a nobody, because we were a nobody. And so we focused a lot on quality control, measurement, equipment, supplier management, and understand that. That's a very industrial part of the whole exercise. And then the third decision we made was, okay, assembly. Assembly is underestimated, highly underrated, I think. It is a very complex exercise, and in the watchmaking industry, you have 2 stages of assembly. So you have, after manufacturing a part, you have something called T0, terminal 0. That's the pre-assembly. That's when you rivet an axle together with a wheel, or 2 pieces together, or you set stones in a plate. That's called T0. And and we focused on that, which means that we actually, after designing the part, we get the parts in, control them, send them to the next supplier, get them in, control them, send them down to the next supplier, or do things in-house right away. This was the only way to control the quality of an engineering exercise. And many companies don't do that. Usually they get some finished pieces from suppliers. So we focus on that.
And how much of the in-house is now implemented where you are, and are you gonna be able to take us to see a little bit of the activity?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, machining itself, we work together with suppliers, also companies like Armin Strom and many other, Galvador. They are very highly specialized companies. You know, it's not just machining, it's also hardening, it's the right washing method, it's plating. So there are a lot of very much hidden, very critical supply issues which you have here, and that's what we do. So we control the entire T0 assembly process in here, and we control the T1 assembly also in here. And our probably next 2-3 years, we will start in-housing also CNC machining to a certain degree in order to fill the gaps. We have done that already, by the way, also together with Bremont at this time. And we will also start to acquire turning machines in order to control the most difficult parts. We only want to do the most difficult stuff. You know, you don't need to make screws. Other people can do screws. It's important to do the tricky stuff, and that's what we do.
You famously said multiple times, Andy, that cost comes from not knowing.
Yes.
And being independent in this case, how key was it for you then to make those decisions that have taken you to be, again, one of the most competitive offers for the quality of the work that you propose today?
Yeah, let's say, I can switch another slide. I mean, of course, the first movement is the hardest one. I mean, that's where you learn. And at the end of the day, watch movement making, there's a difference between, first of all, when it's getting very small, it's getting very difficult. I very much distinguish between the size, form factor of a movement and the run rate. So when it's getting small, it's much, much more difficult than when it's a little bit bigger. So we focused on a very small movement, 25.6, 4.95 with integrated functionality. That's part of the watch we are talking here right now. That was the basis, and that's where we learned the trade, I would say. This took us, and my rule is the rule of 3. So you need to build it 3 times so that it starts to get good. We are now probably at level 5. So we have probably done it 5 times already. And the first 2-3 years is just finding your failures. I mean, it's everything we do is kind of known, you know. Watchmaking in itself is a very old business. The problem you have is you need to find out who knows the stuff. And if you don't find someone, you need to learn it by yourself. So it's a pure learning exercise. It is not a technology exercise. It's a learning curve. And that's what costs so much money. And so we just applied brutal cost control on everything we did. We calculated every part we source. We tried to really find out where do we lose the money and why. And when you lose too much money too long on a continuous basis, you don't make it to the finish line. And that's why so many watch projects fail, because people who get into that they are not aware how long they need to learn doing that. And I think that's where we are pretty good. Yeah.
And in the process, you have experimented already with some humbling challenges, such as integrating big dates, power reserves,
Yes.
micro rotor technology, tourbillon. So
Correct.
it looks like you've been through some of the biggest challenges in watchmaking altogether.
Yeah, to be honest, we look at a movement a little bit different. We look at it as an accumulation of core components. Let's say it like this. So we do not look at it as a movement. We have developed a set of core componentry, which we use in order to configure movements out of it. And that makes us fast. So I can show you some of that. For example, I just need to see if there's something in which shouldn't be in there.
Yeah, I was just looking. maybe here.
Yeah. Landon, you continue talking.
Yeah. So so as Andy was saying, we've been focusing on our core components toolkit. That's what we call it. Basically, you're able to take the base components, the regulation, and the functions, and from those sort of three categories, be able to take a function that you developed early on, maybe with K1, and apply it to something like K2 or to the tourbillon later on. And based on all this that's coming up now here on the screen, the base components, regulated, and functions, you're able to make the movement of the spec that you're after. So I'll let Andy take over here.
Do you see that in the right direction now?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Or is it reversed? You see it in the right direction. Okay. Yeah. So that's, when you make a movement, there are probably 5 very, very difficult things to solve. The first thing is hand setting mechanism. You pull the crown and then you set the hands. It sounds easy. It's not easy because it clicks, it needs to work, the crown shouldn't be fall out. Then you have hands friction. When you set your hands, you need to manage this. Then you have an automatic winding system. That's a very challenging function. Then you have a big date, very challenging, or a date in general. I mean, just think about, there are companies which are very big who have problems with the date. I mean, they're in Geneva and they're in La Chaux-de-Fonds. It's not that they are almighty. And so we really focused on each and every one of these core components so that we understand each process around this assembly, including the sourcing, including the management, including the assembly toolings, including the testing processes. And when you are able to control all of these isolated things, later you are able to, in fact, generate other movements with a different form factor, with some different things into a new movement itself. And that's what makes us fast. So I would say we have done our base work for the last 7 years, 10 years. And this gives us the capability now to do all kinds of movements, always under the very clear guidance that we talk about high performance products. We don't talk about low performing manufacturer stuff.
Yeah, so functionality, accuracy, and finishing have not been compromised in order to reach, the pricing that you guys managed to reach.
Correct.
Andy, maybe this is the correct moment to clarify a little bit the story. It's a big story in the UK with the launch of the new Bremont caliber that has been promoted quite heavily over here. Obviously, now it is more clear that Horage was obviously involved in helping Bremont in developing what they have developed. Do you want to maybe say a couple of words just to put the right things in the right box for everyone's?
Yeah. Do you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So for us, it's an extraordinary, interesting project. So, things get communicated, people understand things in one way and another way. There's always some friction, probably. But for us as a company, we were approached by Bremont. They tried already and they're really serious about doing that. And we then started to discuss about what way could you do to get to manufacturing in the UK? because the primary goal is to manufacture stuff at site, which is not that easy, by the way. I mean, people always say, "Oh, that's."
Just to put it into context, it's something that has not been done in the last 300 years, except
Correct.
for
Correct.
obviously
And-
George Daniels and Roger Smith at the moment, and Garrick are doing a great job of nearly integrating production in the UK. They're nearly there actually.
Yeah, but it's also a very different thing. You know, we are talking about a certain volume. We are talking about a certain performance level of product. And that's a whole different ballgame. And we are talking about the level of Swatch Group and Rolex manufacturing, which needs to be managed in order to achieve something like this. And so we are known for industrial scale design. We lay out our products in the way that they can be manufactured at scale or at smaller scale. It doesn't matter. And so that's when we came together, and then we said, yeah, that's interesting for us. Also, we always had the dream that perhaps we could also help to manufacture outside of Switzerland, because I think manufacturing and watchmaking should come closer to the people. You know, and Switzerland shouldn't be an island where it's the only place where you can buy some watches. And so this new facility in Henley and the whole team and the way we work together was super interesting, and is interesting, by the way. It's ongoing. It's not that there's we just make a movement and then everything works fine. They will have the next 5 years a lot of work to do and continuously onboard process know-how in order to stabilize manufacturing. And the first step was obviously to be able to put all the T1 assemblies together in Henley. So that's what we did together with them.
So you're basically forming them on the way for them to become an independent manufacturer in the future, if we can simplify it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a collaborative exercise. People come here, we go there, we exchange thoughts, we nearly call each other every day. We select machinery together. We see what can be done faster in the UK, what needs a supplier here. So it's an ongoing process. And the first step we have done was bringing the most, let's say, value critical or cost critical part to the UK, and that's machining, CNC machining, plates, all the plates.
Very interesting, Andy. That was by the by, because it's so much in the news, of course, in the UK, and it's interesting.
Yeah. It's crazy discussion, and sometimes I found it a little bit sad that some people are so harsh on it, because I think probably people have not a real good understanding how hard it is what they have to pull off. It is extraordinarily challenging what they want to do and what they have to do. And I think, Bremont had a backstory, probably didn't go as well as they wanted it before, but I think they had a very good understanding now of where they need to go. And and we hope we can support them in the best possible way, and until the point where enough manufacturing has reached the UK and where they can gain more and more independence. And I think that's
great.
That's
That's
a good
great,
thing,
Andy. Thanks for clarifying that. And yes, I was going to ask if we can have a look at the premises, and then we can unveil the surprise that we have for our guests.
Sure.
And so I should let you take the lead, as half an hour is gone. I think we have a few more minutes available, but I'll let you manage that. Thank you.
So we're going to take a tour around the facility now, and then when we come back, we'll go through a couple more slides of just the watches that we want to show today, and then we'll wrap up with any questions after that. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to flip over to my mobile phone, because it's much easier to walk around than with a computer, and we'll get Andy pointing out and showing us the different workstations we have.
Do you want to have a glimpse on the watch before we walk?
We could, if that's easier for you. I also have my own camera. Yeah, here we go.
At the end of the day, we are talking about watches.
Absolutely. And this for for Bradley and for the SCC members, this will be the limited edition created exclusively for SCC that will be proposed to the members of the club. And I hope I will have the pleasure to join one of the future events to be able also to show the watch myself.
Okay, so it's a little bit dark. We will see that later. It's blue, but need to tune the light a little bit.
Yeah, that is technically a blue dial, which I'll try to grab on my.
Coming. So you see, we'll play around with it a little bit later.
And we'll show some logo placement in that later on as well. So
okay, so Landon is switching on his phone and get out, and then I will join him. There's also some watches there.
Oh yeah, it comes the other way around though. Yeah. Oh, carry on. Yeah, take the lead, and I will keep playing with my cameras here.
Good.
Just shut the door. Just shut the door there, Andy.
Huh?
Just shut the door.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go sideways here. It'll be a little bit easier.
You hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So, as I said, that's our facility. We have another office up the hill. We have space, but we don't waste it, because I am a fan of very densely packed intelligence, which means the engineering in our facility sits more or less right in the assembly area. This means that the people easily can hear and see what's going on when there's a problem with a part. So we are using Onshape, modern cloud cut technology, where everybody can actually simultaneously draw on the movements. So Pascal here is working on K2 machining parts for the GMT version. We are perhaps the most digitized company in Switzerland, because we don't have servers anymore. We just throw them out the window, everything in the cloud. And so when you look at the organization of the facility, on the left side, usually we do what we call T0. On the right side, we do T1. In the middle, there's high resolution microscoping and quality control. In effect, everybody is knowing everything in our facility. So we do not need to walk around and have meeting rooms. People right away communicate. So what you see here right now, for example, when you have plates for machining, we have some here. Where we got one. Usually plates are machined and then they are put onto these tools. These tools are put onto these machines, and then you actually press the stones into it. You don't do that by hand. You do it 100% force distance control, because this is very, very important for setting the stones, the T0 process on the machining. We build all our tools by ourselves, so that cupboard is full of toolings for all kind of different stones. You have different nozzles. For everything, there's a different fixture. So all of these tools, that's where the know-how is. This is what is movement making. That's where you really need to know stuff. That's the T0 pre-assembly stages. Because when some design is wrong and doesn't work in T0, then there's probably a fundamental design flaw in there. Here now we have also the T0 assemblies. Here is a very interesting machine, which you see. Everybody knows that we are not only making escapements, but we also match balance springs. So we make our balance wheel and the balance springs, and this machine is needed in order to classify the springs and match them together with the wheel. Here Amanda is assembling also the ratchet wheel. So you can have a look at that. You know, it doesn't really matter if you operate something by hand or automatically. We can automate that, but the know-how is in that tool. So how actually the tool is being built, that the result will be a precise spring located in the right place. So that's our know-how tool making. And afterwards, you can automate that if you want when the quantity is going up. But one shouldn't automate things when you don't need it. So, okay.
How are we doing there, Pietro? Guys, can you hear us all right?
Everything okay?
Hello? Pietro?
Yeah, it's perfect. Sorry, I unmute myself so there was
Okay,
no
great.
difference in the sound. It's all
Just wanted to
good.
make sure you could hear everything all right.
So
We'll
here,
carry on.
Leon is looking at something very special. So bug finding, as far as I can see. That's actually the ellipse, which is driving the balance wheel. So we are doing a lot of research on all the components. I think not many companies really have this depth of knowledge about its own parts. Fair to say, we are handling roughly 3,500 information steps in order to make one movement. And that's a lot of work. This means one of the steps wrong, the movement probably doesn't work. This is a process business. It's not a machining business. It's a real process business. And we really control each and every step going in and out, in and out and out until the watch is finished. So then we have a lot of washing. The washing is very, very important. It's a sealed washing machine. So apparently there's a washing process going on here. This alone takes ages to figure out what part needs to be washed with what kind of solvent in what kind of process, because if it's not washed correctly, watch doesn't work. And people do not have a real understanding about these hidden processes or dip lubrication. I mean, you're all car guys, you know lubrication, you know engines and these kind of things. So focus a lot on this kind of things. And then here we see,
because of the implications on a number of factors, such as you said, lubrication. So it involves obviously friction, that is key, the control of friction within the mechanical movement, and not less importantly, the aesthetics, the final aesthetics, and the color combinations as well. That are all result of chemical reactions, basically.
Correct. So there's a lot of things to consider. Sometimes over lubrication is a big problem because the calendar is slipping through or these kind of things. So you really need to stabilize process. It's a pure process exercise. And so coming from that area, now we see T1 assembly completing complete movements. Laurent is assembling them. We are using a traditional round transfer system in order to give guidance to the operator. Usually you have it in the middle and then you operate it with the hands. You can stack them, you can move them around. So it's the early ways of automation in the watch industry. And still ETA and companies like Rolex use this very simplified round transfer assembly style in order to assemble movements at scale. It's practical and it works. So in here, yeah. So you see parts. It's a parts war. And Lenny here is getting around. He's putting together.
Say hi, Lenny.
Hey.
Lenny's our regulating master here.
The regulating master with the turbine.
Yeah.
No pressure, Annie.
No, good. These are actually K2 sample parts, correct? So these are the balance springs with the screw balance wheel and assembled already with the springs. And now we are testing, finding the right setup in order to make it easier during production and assembly afterwards. So that's basically the job, trying to dial in the thing in the right way.
We have a peek to our new K2 movement here.
Yeah.
So there are three calibers now, as we've seen before now. The K1, which was the historical first caliber that came out. The K2, which is going to be launched with a new Super Seed collection that you've been teasing over the last few weeks.
Yes.
And the KT, which is the amazing tourbillon that I'm wearing today for the occasion. And
everybody has tourbillons here, except me. What's wrong here?
I've been behaving very well, Andy. That's the thing.
Employees first, you know. Yeah, the tourbillon is also here on testing, but that's an early sample. That what led us to this project, and yeah, K2 is our new.
Just to give yeah, to put things into context, the KT, so the Tourbillon 1 subscription has just been closed, and I think you guys managed to sell over 200 pieces, which is an incredible result. Of course, the value proposed was amazing for the price point, which was £5,900 excluding tax. So unheard of before, a Swiss tourbillon, fully Swiss made. I think not just on Swiss made criterias, but actually you're over 90% of Swiss made. I think I've heard 98%. So at a price point that has not been seen before. Did you expect such a success in an area where, Andy, honestly, you were not expected, to be active?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we were all against it in the beginning. My wife said we have to do this because at this time a friend of ours was working in La Jouperet, and that's why we started this whole project, and we started to do this. And yeah, and then out of a sudden we fall in love with this whole tourbillon story, and and then the whole story went a little bit sideways during Corona, and then we had to do it by ourselves. And finally, everybody's happy, and I think we have shown that our base work from the past 10 years bear fruits, and that we can be so fast because we really understand movements in their depth. So what we had to develop new was the cage system. Yeah, that's a pretty hard one because it's a very, very difficult thing to develop. But because we have a lot of silicon background and escapement development know-how, we can do that. If you don't have escapement development know-how, you can't really develop a new tourbillon. So it played in our hands, and the fact that we offered it for a price like this, I mean, every brand has a certain pricing power. We are a young brand. We have customers who look at what we do. They expect to get a top product for an acceptable price. So we can't just step in and say, hey, yeah, cool, we do some tourbillons and then we charge 50,000 for it. That doesn't work. I mean, and so we wanted to stay in what we can accept, what is okay, so we don't go bankrupt on the whole exercise. And we really try to control very precisely our cost also during that process, being very fast, no waste, no overproduction. And this typically leads to an acceptable margin system for us and a good price for the client. That's what we are. I always say we want to be treated, or we try to treat our clients in the way we want to be treated by others. And if we believe something is outpriced, then probably it's not our product. Yeah. So I think, that's pretty much who we are.
Okay. So let's keep moving on here. And we'll get in. We're almost done the tour.
I think that's usually we assemble under flow boxes. So that's where the air pressure is squeezed out. And we actually here have deionizers. And so when we close, for example, in the tourbillon, it is very tricky with the dust. So the dust somehow goes into that open movement, even if it's only one small thing, and there is no dust free in the world. And then you deionize the air in order to push out that little dust. But sometimes it just comes out and say, damn, that's dust is in there.
So
and then what needs to come back to us. So that's also a lab area. So we have very sophisticated measuring machines. So this, if a company has something like this, then you know they engineered movements. That's a torque measurement meter. It measures tenths of a thousand of a micronewton meter. So close to nothing. Car industry has big torque. We have very small torque and rare equipment here. Yeah, and I think that's probably walk over there. You want to have a look outside the backyard?
Oh, yeah, we can take a peek out so you guys get an idea.
So don't look at that. That's our backyard. When you go up the river, then you end up somewhere near Saint-Denis, probably where Longines is.
That's why you take inspiration for some of your colors, huh? You
Yeah.
identify you could Jura green. So we see some Jura green there, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the walking trail right there. It's carved out of the side of the mountain, and that's where, yeah, the Jura green. We also have the gorge blue. So this is the gorge, and we also have the Swiss pearl, which is the snow in winter here. And we also have a little goat down here right now. It looks like a gams.
Yeah. Oh, there is a goat.
Oh, there's a goat. Yeah,
There's a goat in the backyard.
anyway.
Okay, didn't see that so often here. Just we imported it for the British. Just a quick walk. So you see we have some place to grow, but we really don't want to waste our space. So it doesn't make too much sense. I always show that because people should get a feeling. This is full of pots, you know. Each of these boxes are full of parts. These are the micro rotor samples right now. When you open a box like that. So that's a lot of small stuff here. And as said, we control each part in every stage of its maturity. And at the end of the day, that's a big parts exercise. So we have standard parts and movement specific parts. Currently, we are a little bit low in inventory, but don't get me wrong, sometimes there are a couple of thousand pieces in such a small box. Okay, I hope that gave you a little bit of an idea.
All right, guys. So we're gonna head back in here and get to the computer, and we'll switch over camera. So I'm gonna turn off the mobile camera here, and we'll see you in just a moment. Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much. As I anticipated, obviously at the limited edition, which is obviously it's us, the retailer of independent watch brands. We specialize in creating the awareness and the education about these incredible processes that some of the independent watchmakers are able to carry out. And as we have clarified today, it doesn't happen just overnight. But in the case of Horage, is over 10 years of engineering, industrial engineering development, to get to the point of being a fully fledged in-house manufacturer as they are today, being able even to form and to train and to educate, you know, brands outside Switzerland, such as in the case of Bremont, where they have established a collaboration with them. We are going back now to the view on the collections that Horage honored us to develop for SCC as a special private edition for the members of SCC, and we're gonna see them now graphically in more details because of course the light doesn't give justice, the camera light doesn't give justice to the exact colors and the materials that are used for this edition. So it's either we're gonna do it now with
So we're here.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. So do you want me to jump into the watch details here, Pietro?
Yeah.
Okay, so which slide are we showing here on the screen? So we have the Atarc HB. So we're going to be showing two watches today, the Atarc HB and the Atarc 10-year. And they're both made from hardened titanium, the cases. And this is about 7.5 times more hard than stainless steel. And this material is really quite special because it's a case that's made in basically 3 segments. On the side we have, just see here, as you look here on the side, it's a multiple piece construction. So you have the bezel on top, and then you have this piece here, then you have the case body in the middle, and then you have the case back here as well. And all of these pieces have to be perfectly manufactured so they can sandwich together. And that's how we got away with a very, very low profile for the Atarc HB and the Atarc 10-year, because it's only 10.05 millimeters. And that is very, very low profile. So it's extremely lightweight as well with the titanium case. This material as well, when you put all these pieces together into the case, they actually have to match perfectly. And there's a very important process that happens in between manufacturing the case and it actually coming to be assembled, and that's the hardening process. And Andy, maybe you want to elaborate a little bit on the hardening process?
The hardening is done, it's actually an oxygen infused hardening process. This means we take grade 5 titanium and then you put it in a vacuum oven and infuse oxygen on very high temperatures. This means these oxygen atoms get squeezed into the titanium matrix. And when the whole thing shrinks back together, it's pretty hard, which says 1200 HV. Afterwards, in order to get this very smooth feeling in gray, we need to actually bring that to an after finish treatment. That's very tricky to do. And then we end up with an overall hardness of 800 HV. That's roughly 4 times in steel. And the cool thing is it wears very, how to say, it wears very soft. It's
soft.
metal, but it wears kind of a little bit warm.
It's a bit satiny.
Yeah.
It feels like a satin finish on the
super tricky process. We developed that over time together with the case maker. Then we need to send it to Denmark. Then from Denmark, we need to send it to Switzerland and then back to the case maker. And so
I can confirm that.
Yeah,
really well.
Yeah.
Great, and very sharply and ergonomically on the wrist, and you can barely feel it.
Yeah.
I particularly like the vertical brushing on the dial. Besides, of course, again, the functions that you're able to propose, such as the big date and the power reserve, which are incredibly functional indications.
Right. Let's see if we can have a little bit of a different color here now.
Yeah, it's hard with our lighting right now to get all that blue to come out, but we just get it just right. You see it starts to come to life a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it there as well. Yeah, Pietro, you also have one there. Looks really great. And this is a vertically brushed dial. So underneath of it is actually it's what gives it this change in color is actually the silver finish that's underneath that's brushed into the dial. And then we also have for functions, we have the small seconds at 9 o'clock, power reserve indicator at 6 o'clock. And we also have the big date at 3 o'clock. And this is achieved through a dual disc calendar wheel. So most brands, they have a single disc that changes the date. And with the K1 movement, we actually have 2 discs in there that let us achieve this sort of very sort of split numerals and big date presentation. Another thing
in terms of date readability, that's the icing on the cake. The double disc big date, as it's called.
Yeah. And so it's a screw-in crown, or screw-down crown, however you like to call that, and has just a few positions there, so you can switch the date and make a little bit. Sorry.
Oh, you can come closer.
A little bit.
Yes.
Get a view of how the date changes there.
I love that. This is what makes it hard to. I mean, if you would hear or feel it, it's like clicking. That's the hard part in engineering. that thing really clicks. And when you go a little bit further, then the cam is coming. It's a semi-fast switch. So, yeah, okay.
So, and this is the blue version. As we said, the limited edition for SCC will be launched in 2 versions. One is with the blue dial, the other one with the, obviously on the plain bezel and gray dial, also vertically brushed. And both in, we are thinking 20 pieces limited for both, for either piece.
And also with this blue one, before we head over to the 10-year piece, we have it's full luminous in through all the numerals, and so if you really like something that glows, it really comes to life at night. And the tips of the hands are also filled with Swiss Super Luminova. It's the X1 grade as well, so it's the absolute best that our partners down the road here produce for us. So on the case back side, you get a nice view of the K1 movement, and we have on the 10-year and as well with the HV, we have start where you are, use what you can. Use what you have and do what you can. And this, I mean, Andy,
that's very much our that's very much our philosophy. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. This mentality fit to our way of doing things, and if things take a little bit longer, yeah, okay, then it take a little bit longer, and we go that hard way. So yeah, it's probably our most techy product, I would say. It shows what we can do, what we are capable of doing. We didn't talk about the deployment buckle, by the way. That's also pretty much our own thing, or fingerprints here.
Yeah.
So get rid of those fingerprints.
So it is hardened as well on the buckle portion, and also the strap is just made down the road in the Chaux de Fonds, and it's handmade here in Switzerland. All of our straps.
So that the good thing is it has this spring here. So usually you have coils, but we have a spring blade in there, and the spring blade directly engages into these two hooks, which means the durability of that buckle should be very good, and it is good because we tested it also in the independent labs, that you don't have this typically problem with the springs wearing out. So you don't have that in this case. Yeah.
Okay. So we have
as we see the gray dial version. If Bradley, you wanted to maybe share the visual of the two watches, so then we can recap on both. And again, exclusively available for the members of SCC Club. Yeah. So sorry, London, for the interruption.
Yeah, no problem. So this is the gray one that you were speaking of, and it's called the Atark 10-year. Now, pardon for any dust that you see here. I've been wearing this one a lot. So it is one that, and as you can see, usually a watch that you're wearing a lot is going to show a lot of scratches and a lot of wear and tear in the steel watch. And this is a hardened titanium. And I'm pretty brutal on my timepieces. And so you can actually see that it's held up extremely well. And really, standout differences between the two watches are, first, when you see the bezel, is the HV in the blue has this notch bezel aesthetic to it, and then we went with a smooth bezel here on the Atark 10-year. The 10-year also has an anthracite dial, and it actually has less luminous. There's more luminous into the blue, so if the luminous is your thing, that would be the option to go with there. But if you wanted something that's a little bit more neutral and in gray on gray, it's really a wonderful color combination into the 10-year. 10-year also comes with a bracelet. Yeah, it's hardened titanium. It also comes with a leather strap as well, and so that's a little added bonus that comes along with that one. Onto the back side, let's see if we can show that here. We have the 10-year. Let's see here. Yeah, you can see the K1 moving here, and on the rotor, it's laser edged with 10-year 19 times, so dark 10-year 19 times
in different languages.
In different languages, and you also see here the signature from Jonas, who's just out in the other room right now. He's one of our engineers, and we also have the signature from, where's Mr. Florian here? Let's see if we can find him. Get that rotor around. We also have Florian Serix on there. It's a little difficult to see.
We can see it. We can see it.
Yeah, his signature is there as well. And Florian, I mean, he's got a pretty historical background, having been the CEO of Jupere Boucher manufacturer and the head of EDA laboratories. He's been integral in our movement development and our projects. So I think that gives you a pretty good idea of the two watches that we're talking about here. And we'll just show you what we would like to do for a logo placement for SCC. And we'll just jump over to those slides now. And that will be the last one here, Andy, for 7. So we would be placing that on the crystal on the underside here. And so it's just something that makes it a little bit unique, doesn't take away from the aesthetic of the watch itself. It's a very nice statement as well. And the price we are offering is £3,500 for the 10-year and $3,100 for the Ataric HV. And yeah, and those are the 2 pieces we have today. So did you guys have any questions, Bradley or Pietro?
Yeah, there was a question from Johnny Pietro, so I don't know if you want to ask that question.
Yeah, so Johnny, and I say hi to Johnny, is also the editor of a limited edition and a micro brand independent brands expert. Johnny is asking if he had a glimpse of the idea that you also toying with hairsprings in your workshop. So what is your independence in terms of hairsprings, which we know is a bit like the holy grail for independence in watchmaking?
Yeah, I'm a little bit dark now. Coming back. Okay.
Coming back.
Yeah, hairsprings. Of course, we originally didn't want to make hairsprings, but when nobody's selling it to you, then you obviously have to get involved into that.
Fair point, that one.
What?
Fair point.
Fair point. So, because movement without hairspring doesn't really work. Yeah, and in very early days, and back in 2011, we started to get into silicon, and we're investigating a lot around that. And yeah, and then there's a patent landscape, difficult stuff, and the market changed a little bit. But we learned a lot how to actually calculate and lay out hairsprings. We do not talk about manufacturing. We are buying hairsprings from Atokalpa according to our 3.5 Hertz spec, and we match them by ourselves. We bend the end curve by ourselves, and we put them together. So we have deep understanding of regulating components. You can see that also here. I brought a couple of parts here. Wait a second.
We're just going to switch to a camera and show you a few silicone components here.
And while you're doing that, I can see everyone's microphones are muted. So if you have a question next, please just unmute yourself so I know who you are, and then I'll ask you the questions. Does anybody listening in, if you have a question, just unmute yourself. I'll keep an eye on who's not, and we'll get a question to the team over there.
So these are silicone escapements with our own proprietary center fixing technology, and I think this is the part which gives the movement the run, the performance, the efficiency. That's why we have 65 hours power reserve. That's why we can build actually a tourbillon with 120 hours. That's why we can make a micro rotor with very likely beyond 65 hours power reserve, because the efficiency comes from that area. The spring itself is more the accuracy part. So the accuracy is the spring is responsible for the accuracy. So we have move that in. Where are we? Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's not very sharp. Yeah, that's okay here. So you can see that.
We have a question from BK Fulton. Has the global supply shortage impacted your production at all? As we are, this is very interesting. This zooming into these components that you're showing at the moment for the escapement.
Funny thing is raw material. So some of our suppliers have asked us to place orders for high-grade raw materials, special steels, and other things like QB, copper, beryllium stuff. I don't know if it's a real shortage or if it's just paranoia ordering by everybody around the world. I guess it's more paranoia exercise because we do not really need a lot of material. What we see, however, is that we have also partners in Asia, like in Thailand, that they have sometimes a corona exercise around, with shutting down factories or whatever. That's what we can see. Just from my point of view, this means, yeah, we are right, in-housing more and more, doing things more by ourselves to be more and more independent and not affected by global supply chain exercises. So
yeah, and one of the other things that's contributing to it is the delivery of products and things that are happening in the logistics sector. This is affecting everybody in the world, just because there is, you've seen it with Brexit, you know, it's just typical things with, you know, offloading goods when they arrive and all of that. So that's the logistics side of things has turned into a bit of an exercise, I think, just for everybody.
yeah.
Great. And we've got a question from Chris. Chris, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question? If I don't see you on mute, I'll ask it for you. Okay, so the question from Chris is, what's the difference between the HV and the 10-year model? Is it just the warranty?
What did he say there?
What's the difference between the HV and the 10-year?
Yeah.
Okay, there's quite a few differences, and the first, when you look at them, is the dial color, which is a standout piece. So we have anthracite here. We also have the blue on this side. The bezel as well. The bezel is a completely different design on the HV as opposed to the 10-year. When we go over to the back side, the movement,
Different finish.
finish is completely different. I'm just trying to find the camera here. Yeah. So we have a completely different finish on the movement. Andy,
Yeah.
cameras here.
I,
We'll zoom out a little bit so we can see those.
Yeah.
So my thumb in here, you can see the differences in the movement. So one is done in anthracite, one is done. Yeah, this is our, I guess you could say, it's decorated less than on our 10-year. There was a lot of work that went into the decoration along with the signatures from the engineers here on the 10-year as well. And so it's just I guess you could say, a more highly finished movement per se. And the 10-year comes with both a bracelet and a strap with it. And the HV comes with just the strap itself.
Right.
As far as the function is concerned, it's the same.
Cool. So the HV model you said comes with both. It comes with the strap and the bracelet.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And is it the same strap that we can see here?
The strap is actually, we don't have the strap here with us right now, but it is a tan suede that comes with it as well. So it's a color match to the gray.
Right, I see. Okay. I think I just answered Chris's question. I believe it's a 6 to 8 week lead time. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if we do the SCC logo placement on it, it'll be a little bit. Yeah, we'll have to look at it. Yeah, it says 6 to 8 weeks right now. And so depending on when the order comes in and how close we are to the holidays, we just have to make sure that we allow enough time to make sure that gets done. Yeah, as soon as possible, or we consider the holidays as well.
Next week.
Equation.
Yeah,
always next week. Yeah.
So in regards to the strap and bracelet options, then on the HV, there would be an opportunity to order a titanium bracelet as optional.
Yeah, we need to look at our inventory because the 10-year is a specific number that we have right now. And we would need to look at if there is a significant interest in that. If we would have the inventory, I need to speak with Celine. She is managing all of those things. And before I eat my words here or overpromise, I should really check in with her first.
Purchasing department gets angry. Yeah. Don't promise stuff we can't keep.
And I just realized we're going massively over time. So I just want to see if anybody else on the call has any more questions from the team. So does anybody have any more questions? Unmute yourself now, or we'll round things up. I think that's safe to say. Everyone needs to get back to work. So, okay, so we'll wait to see some pictures from you on the strap as well that we haven't seen, if that's okay. But I'll leave things with Pietro and you guys to round off. But thanks from SCC and thanks from my side It's been brilliant having you. It's been brilliant. This experience has been amazing. So we look forward to hopefully seeing you in person at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure, thanks a lot.
Yeah, and if any of you are ever in Switzerland, the door is open.
Everybody
So
can
you
come
come
here.
and visit us and meet the team and see everything yourself firsthand. It's not a problem.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. And thanks, Bradley, for facilitating this. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, London. I'll see you very soon.